Hey folks, well welcome back to Jack's Corner, where truth and reality have a seat at the table. Folks, you have no idea how important that intro phrase is. As an attorney of 45 years, and I have fought all my life battling the demon of lies as a professional, but here's what is so exasperating, at least for me. It's getting people to accept the truth. They reflexively will believe the lie even when the truth fits better. So we battle the lie and then have to battle to get people to accept the truth. And the further removed you are from biblical truth, the less likely you are to know, to live in, and prosper by the truth. Okay, with that said, let's get into today's topics. And this is what I call American idiots, those who blame Republicans for the government shutdown. Really, this is a topic on just the government shutdown of late. This one fact settles the argument. The Democrats are furious that 8 of their Democrat colleagues joined the Republicans and voted to open the government after 41 days of the shutdown. As Alex Marlow of Breitbart News put it, who ended the suffering? The Democrats, who changed their vote. That was how suffering ended. So it was the Democrats who were imposing the suffering on all of us. The radical left communists, to be succinct, across America were outraged at the 8 Democrats that caved in and voted to open the government and end the shutdown. Did you hear that? Yes, Democrats are in a meltdown because 8 other Democrats in their party voted with all the Republicans to open the government. It's sad that we have to be so elementary in our explanations, but that is what public education controlled by Marxist teachers' unions have delivered to us. Polling showed that the public was beginning to blame Republicans for the shutdown. Folks, it was just simple numbers. You see, we have no critical thinking in this country anymore, and that is why there are many Democrat communists in power today. Just like Scripture warned us, we will see bad as good and good as bad. The public is responsible for its own misery as they keep blaming the wrong people for their ills. As Scripture taught us, the Hebrews were condemned by God because they kept killing the prophets He sent them. The people own their own misery. The next time you go blaming an elected official, first look in the mirror and ask yourself, who did you vote for? And what did you know about that person before you cast your vote? Okay, now let's drive this wooden stake into the heart of evil, the incompetence and the stupidity of the Democrat left again. You remember me telling you about that reprobate Eric Swalwell, Democrat representative of California, who was having an affair with a Chinese spy? Well, I have to give it to the Democrats, and the evil for that matter. They are at least consistent. A Chinese former top aide to New York Governor Kathy Hochul has been exposed, and it's now revealed that she enjoyed a lavish lifestyle with millions of dollars in kickbacks working as an undeclared agent for China, according to federal prosecutors. Now, you would have never heard about that when the FBI and the Department of Justice was under Biden's control, but now we have new people in charge uncovering the crimes of the past. You see, in my podcast, I keep piling up that insurmountable mountain of evidence that conclusively establishes that the Democrats and the Democrat left, as I call them, are the enemies of this country and your freedoms. The Democrat Party was taken over by what teachers and professors were teaching, that is, hatred for America and acceptance of socialism, which is just basically communism in disguise. Here again, it's trying to sell the truth, but people love the lie, and millions pay for it with their lives. Now let's skip to AI and talk about that for a moment. Christians and conservatives better have influence in that area. The polling firm Ipsos asked 9,000 people in a survey to listen to 2 clips of AI-generated music and 1 human-made music. 97% could not tell the difference between music entirely generated by AI and human-created music. Just this week, an AI-generated song became first ever #1 hit on the U.S. Billboard chart. Breaking Rust's Walk My Walk topped the country charts. Now, I know a little bit about this because last week, a good friend of mine and one of the top music producers in the country, along with me and a university president friend of mine, spent 2 hours in a studio and created a song that was almost addictive to listen to. Now, I haven't a musical bone in my body, but in that 2 hours that we spent, which was so much fun, we created a song using AI. So I'm not just shooting from my hip and conjecturing about AI. I saw it work. So my point is there is a lot of good to come from technology. You just have to have the right people controlling it. Christians and conservatives and common sense people need to be not of the world, but in it and influencing it for the good. All too often, Christians, conservatives, Republicans, and just ordinary common sense people surrender ground to the dark side, and they pay for it. There is no walk of life where Christians should not be involved in exerting an influence. Now let's talk about the economy and home ownership for a moment. I'll start with some of the fundamentals of the economy. Well, what do I know about finance and economics? Not only do I have a degree in it, I own 14 different companies and started trading stocks at the age of 14 with my parents, obviously, as guardians in order for me to open up a brokerage account. Yeah, I was reading the stock market and the stock pages at that age. Now, let me start with this. If you're an emotional person, stay out of the stock market. I was joking this morning with my financial analyst friend who was giving me an update on what's really going on behind the scenes. And I told him, we just should outlaw the highly emotional people from being in the market. Now, that was tongue in cheek, but he understood where I was coming from because you see these wild gyrations in the market of 1,000 points one day and down 1,000 points the next. If you can't stay the course, all that will happen is that your wealth will be transferred to unscrupulous people who will be glad to take your money. Now, with that said, according to the Atlanta Fed just today, it looks like the third quarter economy is going to show a GDP growth of 4.1%. Folks, that's huge. But you wouldn't know it by listening to the news because they want you to think that the economy is really bad so that you will blame it on Trump and vote in the Democrats in the midterms. The Democrats have never given you economic prosperity because they're too busy trying to transition your children and indoctrinate them in schools. They haven't the first clue about economics, but they're good at messing it up. But think about this. We are at a 4% increase in the GDP, and the prognosis is that it will be over 4% again for the fourth quarter of this year. This is the sign of a strong and vibrant economy. Now, this is where impatient people deserve the suffering they get. If the economy doesn't turn around immediately and prices don't fall overnight for a lot of them, they're ready to chop someone's head off. Many people out there voted for Bidenomics, and that gave us the highest inflation in 40 years. That kind of thing does not correct overnight. But all the numbers show that the economy is moving dramatically in the correct direction. Do you remember how on day 3 of Trump's second term, that's just a few months ago, that the Democrats tried to blame him for not bringing down the price of eggs when it was the Democrats who ran them up 64% the year before? Here again, there is no truth in the Democrat left, but a couple of months later, the eggs were dramatically down in price. So my point here is that if you're impatient, you will suffer the consequences and abort a recovery that is well underway. And like in the stock market, you will sell in a panic, and the smart guys will buy up what you have to sell at a bargain basement price. And I, for one, try not to ever pass up a bargain. So with that, let's move on to the topic of home ownership. This all ties into the overall general economy. It's harder than ever to buy a home thanks to immigration, environmental regulations, and Biden's inflation and zoning restrictions. This is a crisis, but it fits in with the Democrat left's agenda. Now, here's the dirty little secret. Remember the infamous pronouncement from the World Economic Forum that by 2030, you'll own nothing and be happy? Yeah, they said that. This is a classic means of social engineering. As reported in Breitbart News, and as Peter Schweitzer said, immigration and climate activists want a nation of renters. And as I said in my last podcast, renters and apartment dwellers are usually Democrats. And why? Because they don't have any skin in the game. The Democrat loves this. Have you given this any thought? Environmental regulators have long been opposed to single-family homes. Let me repeat that. Environmental regulators have long been opposed to single-family homes. Folks, we have to purge our bureaucracy of these leftists and these social engineers. Schweitzer also aptly said that people who don't own are more vulnerable. The biggest investment most people have is their home. And if you take that away, they are more vulnerable. And as researcher and reporter Eric Eggers stated, sovereignty is an American value, but the Democrat leftists don't like that because they want total control over you. Here is just one more reason to deplore and hate the evil agenda of the Democrats. They are un-American, at least in the sense of our founding fathers and our Constitution. Oh, and one last factoid. There is a correlation to a drop in fertility rates, and this has been studied. There is a correlation to a drop in fertility rates between those in apartments and those who own homes. The question was asked, was this intentional? You're darn right it is. This is not a divine conspiracy, to steal a little phrase from Dallas Willard's book of the same name, which I highly recommend, by the way, but it's a demonic conspiracy. And what we're living in right now, particularly in the political sense, is basically spiritual warfare. So what is the solution to the mortgage and home ownership crisis other than voting correctly? Well, let's talk about the 50-year mortgage proposal. The most difficult thing for first-time home buyers is to get their foot in the door. The Democrats that many vote for are the real culprits. So if you are looking to buy a home, the first thing you need to do is stop voting Democrat. That's the first step. But Trump and his administration, they are trying to fix the disaster caused by Biden. Don't forget the millions of aliens he let into the country who are now competing with you young folks for housing. We are behind about 50 million housing units right now. First, deport those who are illegally here, and you will see prices come down and affordability go up. But what about the 50-year loan? Too many of the economic gurus are attacking it, and here's where I think they're all wet. If you can get a 50-year loan with lower payments that you can afford, do it. Why? Well, here is where the so-called experts are either hiding the truth from you or they are just stupid, as many of them are. As Dr. Thomas Sowell once famously said, that the problem with experts is that they think they are experts on everything, and they are often wrong. Some are no better than palm readers as far as I'm concerned, and here's why. And here's why I say this. Once you get your foot in the door, there is nothing keeping you from making extra principal payments when you get a little extra money. If you do this once a year, say you did it once a year, it significantly cuts down on what you will actually pay for the loan and will shorten the loan. In my early years, when I got extra money, or even when I got cash for birthdays or Christmas, I applied it to the principal of my home loan. The loan was periodically recalculated and reamortized, and on a couple occasions, they would refinance the loan and my interest rates went down, as did the amount that I owed on the loan. I'm shocked that this has not been discussed in the news as to the proposed 50-year loan and its potential benefits. No, they just want to talk about the negative. Another thing I know and remember is that the interest rates will not stay the same over 50 years. Now, how obvious is that? But nobody's asking that question. Nobody's pointing that out. Interest rates are not going to stay the same over 50 years, nor will your wealth or your income. It will all go up. So at least you've got your foot in the door. Your circumstances will change, but not in a positive way if you are not in the game. You know, like the old saying goes, and I've never bought a lottery ticket, but they say the best way to not win at the lottery is to not buy a ticket. Well, I'm not proposing buying a lottery ticket. I never have, never will. It's a bad investment. Now, once you are an owner, getting back to the 50-year mortgage, once you're an owner and making your monthly payments, you will create a credit history. Your rating will go up, and that will help with refinancing, which millions of people did over the last 15 years. Some were getting interest rates at the 3 and 4% rate, and I was one of them. Yes, if you get a 50-year loan and do nothing for 50 years, then you will probably pay double for the home. But if you are that dumb in the way that you conduct your finances, then you probably shouldn't own a home. For now, I would recommend young people grabbing the opportunity at the 50-year loan if it becomes available, and at least you will enjoy the benefits of home ownership and also be in a position to refinance and pay down the principal in advance as your economic situation improves. This is just common sense, folks. Get in the market, get in the game. To show you how dumb the experts are, none of them that I have heard have even weighed in on this issue. They have failed to address the near history of everyone, including me, who were doing this over the last 15 years of refinancing and paying down extra on the principal. Funny how forgetful they are, isn't it? Now, let's talk about one of my favorite topics, and I call it, it's not socialism, it's communism. We are seeing the increasing trend of socialists taking over mayorships in our cities. In fact, there are currently 11 socialist mayors in cities around the country, Seattle being the most recent, right after New York. Bet you didn't know the ground was being cut out from under you, did you? How does this affect you if you don't live in a city? Well, let's think about it this way. New York City enslaves the rest of New York. Chicago enslaves the rest of red Illinois, and Minneapolis enslaves the rest of red Minnesota. Millions are being disenfranchised. So what is your action plan? Demand of your state legislators and your federal senators and representatives to start withholding any funds to these cities run by socialists. There's no reason why the rest of us taxpayers should be paying for these failed ideas. The state legislators basically tend to be more conservative, and that is where you take your concerns and fight. And remember, there is no such thing as socialism. It's communism disguised as something kinder. Now, I want you to tell your representatives that none of your tax dollars should go to those cities whose mayors consider themselves Democrat socialists. Again, there is no such thing. They are simply communist, and their philosophies are communist. That should be ruled unconstitutional because it is antithetical to our constitutional form of government. But don't wait on our Supreme Court. Too often they treat the Constitution and interpret it as if it is a suicide pact. Just as I told you, there are no radical Islamists, only Islamists. The same goes for the socialist label. As I have also said recently, until you hold voters accountable and they feel the pain and consequence of their votes, they will continue to keep voting that way, and eventually you will be ruled by communists living in apartments where the government tells you where to live and how to live, just like in Russia. Now, speaking of the problems with the courts and the indolence of the Supreme Court, here is a judicial criminal. This guy is a Biden-appointed federal judge in Chicago who has ordered the release of hundreds of criminal migrants arrested by federal immigration agents. U.S. District Judge Jeffrey Cummins ordered the Trump administration to release more than 600 migrants, and these are criminals, documented criminals, that this judge claims were arrested in violation of a consent decree. Cummins has given the Department of Justice until November the 19th to release the targeted migrants, as recently reported by the Chicago Tribune. This is why I keep warning about a Civil War 2.0. I'm not the only one calling out those warnings. This criminal wearing a black robe is releasing 600 criminals out onto the streets to harm regular Americans. And why? Because It furthers the left's worldview and agenda. These criminals being released are or will be Democrat voters. Go figure. Folks, when that final straw breaks the camel's back, a spark will ignite uncontrollable violence, and then you will be consumed into an irretractable conflict where it is win or die. I've told you so many times, and I've been screaming the same message, and I've been saying it since I was 16 and have watched the progressive rot advance. So what are you doing about it? Are you prepared? Years ago, I listened to a lecture about the psychology of conservatives or those on that side of the political spectrum. And it was mentioned how the very people hoarding guns for their protection are living in a false security because if and when the time ever came that they would use them, they never would be able to. They would not use the guns. Even though I have guns, I would find it nearly impossible to shoot someone. So that is why I choose to fight on the field of ideas and politics, and I urge my listeners to get real and fight now so that it never comes to pulling that trigger. I doubt that many of you could. So let's not become falsely assured because of what we may have stockpiled in our homes. Oh, and by the way, the left already knows this about you and about our side of the spectrum. Now, I want to talk a bit about some of the individuals on the criminal left. Here's another nail in the coffin of what I call condemning evidence as to the corruption and treason of the Democrat left. Senator Tammy Duckworth of Illinois had a staffer who pretended to be a lawyer to help an illegal escape ICE custody. That's a felony. But they are all peas in the same pod, folks. They all attract the same type. They are all Machiavellian. Now you have Governor Gavin Newsom. I call him the Antichrist model. His chief of staff was just recently charged with $225,000 in fraud and corruption. And then you've heard me talk about this guy many times, Eric Swalwell, that California representative who got caught having an affair with a Chinese spy, Fang Fang. And he has just been referred for mortgage fraud by the DOJ. And we all recall how sanctimonious he was when they tried to frame Trump for the same thing, but failed. Then we have Attorney General Letitia James of New York, who campaigned on indicting Trump before she even got elected or before there was any evidence, which was never produced, or nor was there ever a crime to find. Well, now she's been indicted on the same thing she was accusing Trump of. Now we have Senator Adam Schiff of California. Now he's been found having lied on mortgage loan documents as well. And remember how he said, no one is above the law. Well, Adam, time to wear the shoes and suffer the same consequences you wanted to hold others to. The left, the Democrats, want Trump dead. They almost did it, and they still try. They killed Charlie Kirk. Now they want one of their own, Senator Fetterman of Pennsylvania, dead because why? He voted to open up the government and end the shutdown. And of course, we have the new Democrat AG of Virginia who wanted his adversaries killed along with his children. Have I drawn a clear enough picture for you yet as to the makeup of the Democrat left and why they all need to be removed from office? Remember, if you don't remove them, then you will be next. They are coming for you and your freedoms. Don't forget how they locked you down during COVID. The next time, it will be worse. Now, I can't pass this one up. Epstein and the Democrats. Let's talk about the Epstein tapes and files for a minute. Let me remind everybody that of the Epstein friends, they are all Democrats. But you never hear the Democrats today talk about that, and particularly Bill Clinton, who was a frequent guest. Now, you have the Democrats trying to distract from the miserable chaos within their own party, not to mention the fact that communists have overtaken it. And then, of course, you have the Democrats' favorite Republican playmate, and that is Representative Thomas Massie of Kentucky's 4th Congressional District. He's a raging lunatic of the libertarian stripe, and he seizes every opportunity to oppose President Trump, and usually on the most essential and critical bills that need Republican support. Massey has a pathological obsession for attention, and he is cut out of the same cloth as Liz Cheney. There is not a Republican in the 4th District that can give an honest and intelligent justification for supporting Massey's reelection. Of course, of late, Massey has been like a giddy little schoolgirl pushing for the release of the Epstein tapes, but President Trump just popped his balloon and has called for the release of the tapes himself. I have a suggestion for the Kentucky Republican Party. Let's do an investigation of Massey's background. Why? Well, if the Democrats expose the empty suit that Massey is, they may very well win that congressional seat. So I say to my Kentucky Republican friends, wake up. This guy has seized opportunity for himself because the numbers in the House are so close. Here's another fact that many people are not aware of, and that is Epstein hated Trump and did everything to hurt him, as a lot of the records and correspondence reveals. In fact, it is believed, based on sound evidence, that Epstein's hate for Trump arose out of Trump's reporting Epstein to the police. Moreover, Trump ordered Epstein out of Mar-a-Lago in Florida. But, of course, you don't hear that from the Democrats, do you? Also, you never hear the Democrats talk about Epstein in any connection with Trump leading up to the 2016 election. And you never heard the Democrats talk about it after the 2016 election, during Trump's first 4 years. And then again, you never heard about it during Biden's administration. Why? There is nothing there. But then the Democrats want and need to talk about it now because they need to distract from their own failures, particularly their shutdown of the government. The Democrats don't want to talk about the fact that all the witnesses, including Epstein's manager, all testified there was no improper conduct by Trump whenever he was seen in the company of Epstein. So why all the hullabaloo? The Democrats don't want to start talking about the communist mayor of New York that just got elected on the Democrat Party ticket. And they also don't want to talk about the other socialists that are running on the Democrat Party ticket in other cities. And they don't want to talk about the government shutdown that has been proven a political ploy by the admissions of other Democrats to the party's embarrassment. Well, enough about Epstein, as it ranks about 41 on what Americans consider important issues and the things that they are concerned about. But here's a rich fact that you most likely don't know about, and that is an Obama judicial appointee and now judge has blocked the release of some of Epstein's records. Bet you didn't know that. And of course, you won't hear Democrats talk about that either. Why? Because as I have been telling you for a year now, they are Democrats, pathological liars. They would rather you think that Trump is the culprit. And the pathological liars in the Democrat Party can never pass a fact check and are incapable of telling the truth. And the facts bear me out on that. Well, folks, that's it for now. Remember, I've given you action plans in past podcasts. Write them down and put it on your to-do list. Until next time, I'm Jack Richardson for Jack's Corner.